today. And we're delighted to look at one of the critical issues in the world of finance and economics, which is about sovereign ratings and spreads. The way countries, companies around the world, are rated in terms of their creditworthiness and ability to access finance globally, and how, of course, the differences in the borrowing rates depending on those ratings, the way they affect access to finance, and many other issues. And especially the determinants tend to vary. This is path-breaking work that has been undertaken by Dr. Alexandre Kopoin and Professor Issouf Soumaré. In the tradition of the Center for Global Finance, it's in order to introduce the speakers, and I have the pleasure to do that. So let me start by introducing Dr. Alexandre Kopoin, who is the principal research economist in the macroeconomic policy, sustainability, and forecasting division of the African Development Bank. He is an experienced macroeconomist. He specializes in fiscal and monetary policy, applied econometrics, international trade, and economic forecasting. So he's working on issues that have great relevance, the topic of his presentation today. He started his career as an economist at the Quebec Ministry of Finance in Canada, and then as a macroeconomic modeling consultant at the World Bank, and later moved on to the OECD as research economist working on various topics, including macroeconomic modeling, economic forecasting, trade policy. He has also worked in academia, so he has an academic background, like most of us here. He taught advanced macroeconomics, applied econometrics, and optimization techniques in modeling at Laval University in Canada. And he has been very prolific and published in different top journals in the world. In terms of the academic qualifications, he holds a PhD in economics and a Master of Science in Financial Engineering from Laval University, and an MA in Statistics and Quantitative Economics from NCEA, our great partner with the Center for Global Finance in Cote d'Ivoire. He also has a BSc in Mathematics and Physics from INPBH in Cote d'Ivoire. So, great pleasure to have you on board, Alexandre. And his co-author is very well known to the Center for Global Finance, is a frequent visitor to the Center for Global Finance here in London. And indeed, he has a strong research collaboration links with that. He's a partner of the center. And just to introduce him more formally, he's a full professor of finance and the director of the Laboratory for Financial Engineering at Laval University in Canada. From 2012 to 2020, he was the director of international relations on the Faculty of Business Administration at University of Laval in Canada, basically taking the flag and making the connectivity to Laval University with the rest of the world. But before that, he was also the director of the PhD and MSc research programs at the same university. And previously, what he shares also in common also with his co-author and a number of people in the audience, including myself, is that he worked for the African Development Bank and the former risk management unit from 1996 to 1998. He is also linked to many organizations. I know he's the president founder of the Soumaré University in Abidjan. So he does run his own university, his own institution, but also co-president of the Pan-African Institute of Economic and Financial Governance, vice president of the programs for business and financial harbors, president of the scientific of NCEA. I could go on and on and on. He handles many things in his very, very, very busy life. Of course, he contributes scientifically. His productivity is phenomenal. in most of the esteemed journals in our profession. I have been lucky to co-author a number of papers with him, and also to be a project lead, co-investigator with him on quite a number of many projects for a lot of years. And again, I could say he goes on with a PhD, MSc, another MSc, another BSc, another MSc in many areas. But finally, he is a certified professional risk manager and also financial risk manager, and associate chartered director from the College of Administrators and Societies, the College of University Laval. He is therefore very, very well informed on the very topic of this presentation, of this paper, on looking at sovereign ratings and spreads in developing and emerging economies. So with that introduction, I say we are very fortunate. Please join me, put your hands together in welcoming Alexandre Kopoin and Issouf Soumaré for this great paper, great presentation today. The floor, gentlemen, is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Victor, for this nice introduction.
Hey, Alexandre, we cannot see you. Your camera is kind of strange. Check.
You cannot see me? Okay.
Yeah,
No,
we
I can't see you.
You can see him?
Although you can see me, no, I can't see him.
You
Okay,
cannot
let
see him.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Probably you have some problem with your camera. Check that one.
Yeah, let me check that.
Sometimes, yeah.
How is now?
Oh,
No.
we cannot see you. Yeah.
Oh,
no,
yes.
Now we can
Now
see you.
now we can see
I
you.
hope that
Okay,
was
good. Okay.
we
Excellent.
want.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, perfect. Yeah, Victor, I was saying that thank you very much for this nice introduction. It's the first time I hear an introduction on me like that. Thank you so much for for your gracious word that you use. Yeah, good morning to everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. So, as Victor mentions, the paper we're going to discuss today is about the determinants of sovereign rating and spread in developing and emerging economies. So this is a paper co-authored with Professor Soumaré, who is here. And this is an ongoing work. It is still preliminary. So what we are going to share today is some of the preliminary results. So comments are very welcome on the way forward to finalize the paper. And as Vito mentioned, so I'm from African Development Bank Research Department, and Issouf is a professor at Laval University. So in terms of the outline of the discussion, of today's discussion, so in the first part, we are going to look at the context. So what's the motivation of the paper? Why are we looking at the determinants of sovereign credit rating and the bond spread? And also, then I will give you, a snapshot of the literature where we are, and what is our, contribution to the current literature. And then I will, just talk about the econometric modeling framework and the way we estimate the impact of a determinant. And then I will go to the data, just summarize, the data that we use, and then we look at, some of the results that we got, and follow the discussion, and then I will conclude. So this is the plan of the talk today. In terms of the context, so if you look at most of studies on Africa or on developing and emerging market, you will see that GDP growth is slowing down now after the strong rebound that we saw following the pandemic. And we also see that the debt vulnerabilities in most of developing and emerging markets have increased since the pandemic. And in Africa particularly, you can see that debt service in the post-pandemic environment is very high compared to what we have in the pre-crisis. And another striking fact also in Africa is that currently 21 African countries are in debt distress or at high risk of debt distress. So this create a kind of debate what are the underlying factors of debt vulnerabilities in Africa countries and in general in developing and emerging markets. And another striking also fact that we can observe is that the increase in debt level in Africa countries, or in general in the developing countries, is also associated with an increased participation of those countries in the international capital markets since the 2000. And I think that we can also see in most papers, we can see that sovereign bond spread in the market, in the secondary market, you can see that for most African countries, developing countries, we'll see that the bond spreads have increased a lot. And an example could be Ghana and Zambia. If you look at the bond spread, you see that those bond spreads widened dramatically recently. And so that's and another point also, if you, because of what is going on in the debt market, investors and even credit rating agencies, they use now the credit rating and bond spread just to gauge what is going on the debt market, to see if a country is in debt crisis or not. So now they are using the credit rating, they're also using the bond spread. So a question is that, is there any link between the credit rating and the bond spread? What are the fundamental factors affecting all those two components? And that's why that's motivates to know exactly what are the fundamental factors, and if that depend from one country to another or from one region to another region. And if you also, another debate that we hear frequently, and so policymakers from developing and the emerging market, they say that the credit rating that's assigned to them may not reflect the economic fundamentals in the country. And even at the bank here, I remember that we have that debate also, and the president was called to provide a speech on that, and I was the one to draft the talking point. And I was thinking about that. Is there any is there any link between the fundamental factors and the rating that we see, and even what we see, the bond spread that we see on the in the market? And that is the the motivation of the paper. That's why we are looking at what are the determinants, and we want to revisit that, because that is not a new topic. It's not a new topic, and that's why the title is revisiting the determinants. But here we are putting new ingredient on what we already know. And yeah, before we move on, yeah, let's I will give us some very quick definitions, and we already know that. And the first one is what we call sovereign debt. We all know that that is a contractual obligation with legal terms, and it's usually issued by national government in the domestic or international market. And because of what is going on in the debt market, people want to know how to measure the quality of a debt that is issued by government. And one of the indicators that people use is the credit rating, which is provided by a credit agency like Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. And that provide a country ability to repay its debts. And also for investors, they use that as to quantify the risk on the environment if they want to invest. So that's why I think that is the link between that's why we want to link the credit rating to the sovereign debt, because we know that people investor and credit agencies, they use that. And then another definition that I would like to clarify is what we call the bond spread. And this is it's known is the difference between the yields issued by a specific government and the yield from like a government that is a AAA, like the US, Canada, all those countries. And so that is the spread. And what is going on in the market is that we have two indicators. One is provided by the credit agency, which is the credit rating. Another one, which is it's market-based, which is the bond spread. And the literature said that it might be a link, But is that link, it's supported by economic fundamentals or not? And that is what we are going to look at in that paper here. So the key question, very simply, that we try to answer in this paper is that, as I already said, is, we want to see is the credit rating that we see for countries, credit rating. We want to see if that credit rating is linked to economic fundamentals. It's supported by economic fundamentals in the emerging and developing economies. And if that is true, then what are factors? And we'll see them in the, we'll see them and the impact depending on the region. We see the impact. And another thing also that we look at is the link between credit rating and bond spread, which is we also think that is it's fundamental, because some investors use the credit ratings as a signal when they want to invest in a specific country. Some of them also, they don't use the credit ratings, they only use the bond spread. But we don't know if there is a feedback effect between the two components. But most of the paper that we see say that, okay, usually the credit rating is used as an indicator for what is going on in the spread market, in the credit spread market. And the last point that we also want to look at, what we think that is very important, we want to see if there is any bias associated to regions. So, if there is if we call that the so-called African region bias, and that's what we also want to see. And as I mentioned, the paper is still going, so the results are very preliminary. We don't have like clear-cut result so far, but we have interesting results that we want to show to you, so that we can get your comments and see how we can prove we can move on the paper. So those are the questions that we try to answer in this paper. And before we go, to the paper, we just want to see what's already done, what we have, in the literature, and we try to sum up the literature in two blocks. The first block is the standard theoretical paper models that look at the transmission channels between the credit ratings and or between the economic fundamentals and the credit rating, and between economic fundamentals and the spread in the market. And most of the paper, they try to summarize those determinants into two blocks. The first block is what we call the pull factors. Pull factors usually, those are the intrinsic factors of a specific country. So those are the economic fundamentals of a country that is issuing the bond, or that is is provided, that's for which we're providing the rating. And the second block is what we call the push factor. Push factor, as the name is, it is depend on global environment. And here we tested some of the global environment, but we return only one here. That's we use to that we use to as an indicator of the global factors. And in terms of a literature paper that look at this characterization, we can see that there is a new paper by Gay and C, who is in IMF in 2015, and another paper in 2021 also tried to look at all those determinants. But due to lack of data in Africa, usually people all those papers, they don't really go deeply in the African context. And the second block of literature is always that's what is the paper that's saying that there's an asymmetric impact on bond spread. So it's saying that when there is a credit downgrade in the country, the way the spread move is different. From when there is a upgrade in the credit rating, it's completely different. So it's like there is a downward shift, a trending. So, and we have like a lot of people also looking at, that component, and it is another thing that we also want to look at in this paper, to revisit if that is true or not, and to see what is the specific impact for African countries. And given that, the objective here is to revisit, as I already mentioned, revisit the credit rating determinants, and also those of the underlying patterns of the spread. And we also want to look at the linkage, between all those two components. And then we pay particular attention to African countries. And our contribution can be summarized into three elements, three points. First point is that we look at the key determinants, and as I said, that is not very new as topic, but what is new is that we use a larger sample, and we also have a larger period. And an interesting thing also is that we use a monthly rating, which is not yet done in the literature, because usually if you look at in the paper, sorry, you will see that people also usually use like yearly data, because it's very difficult to collect rating data for all those countries on monthly basis. Sorry. And that's what we did. So we spent the time to create to have a comprehensive database on that. And with many countries, and I will show you how many countries that we have. And the second contribution that we also find in the paper is that we found like a robust relationship between country rating and the bond spread. And that's we use many estimation technique, and we got a very robust connection between the two elements. And we also find that credit rating, even bond spread, those are two components are fairly linked to the economic environment of the country. That is also found, even for the African countries, we see that. And a last thing that we also find in the paper is that for African countries, even for the African countries, North African countries, or sub-Saharan Africa countries, we can see that there is a kind of the reaction from the rating to the bond spread is higher in the sub-Saharan Africa countries and in North African countries compared to to other regions. And that is I find that's a key result we want to share for you also. So those are the contribution that we provided for this paper. And let me very quickly go through the econometric framework. So Vito, please remind me of the time if you see that I'm going beyond the allocating time, please. Okay, perfect. So the model that we use, it is a very it is a regression, a panel model. It's very simple, and so if you remember on the literature side, we say that people try to group the determinant into two blocks. The first one, which is the pull factors, second one, which is the push factors. And here you can see the two blocks here. So we are trying to let's say to estimate or trying to see the impact of those factors on the ratings. And the rating that we are talking about here is the rating plus outlook. So most of the probably, but I will come back that when we look at the data. So the rating here is the rating plus the outlook from the three main agencies here. And the X here, X is the country fundamentals. Those are the pull factors. And the Y here is the global environment factor. And we select those factors based on the literature that we visit. We estimated that equation using fixed effect, and also random. And because of the structure of the rating, which is a discrete, it is interpolating data, what we do at some point is to try to estimate this equation using the probit, just to account for the ordinary nature of the rating. just to see if there is any difference. And what we saw is that we were very comfortable of the result that we got from the fixed effect, because the probit also gave the same result. So that is the way, the simple way we're trying to see the impact of the the macroeconomic fundamentals on country ratings. And then on the bond spread, here there are two ways to model the connection between the credit rating and the spread. But I said, if you go through the literature, you will see that the one that is true, is very true, is that the rating provides a signal to people on what's going on the quality of the debt, and that movement is transmitted to the bond market, and that's what we want to. And then we see some movement on the spread. So here the spread is like the one that is receiving the impact of the rating. And the way we trying to see the connection is that we just take the spread, and then we try to see the the impact of the rating. Then we also add the pull and the push factors. So the simple equation is that it's like the previous one, but here now we adding the rating. And those are the fundamentals that we are considered. We will see them, when we move, into the data. We'll see what are the X and the Z here. And we estimate that equation using using the fixed effect and the random panel regression model. That's what we do. So, and as I mentioned, I said that there is another literature saying that there's an asymmetric impact of rating on bond spread. And here we're trying to create that asymmetric. What we do, it's very simple. So we take the rating and we try to, to create some dummies variables. And you will see that, we create one dummy taking into account when the rating is moving up, and another dummy when the credit rating is moving down, when the change is negative and when the change is positive. And then we just augment the previous equation by using that dummies. And because that one is taking time, we are not going to see the result today, but I hope that we will circulate the paper so that people can see what we see in terms of the asymmetric impact. And very quickly, in terms of the data, let me just say some word on how we collect the credit rating. This was very difficult task, and Professor Issouf is here, can testify, that, and he did much of the work actually. So it was very difficult to collect that, because it's very disparate, and there is no how to say that, one source when we can get all those rating. So we need to go from one, from let's say a website to another website just to collect that. And because of the difference in the rating provided by the three main agencies, what we do simply is to collect all of them. And when we have two rating, we try to have to take the average. But the interesting fact is that we also codify the outlook provided by those agencies, and that is something that is not yet done also in the paper. So we use the outlook, and that provides us a greater variability in the data and the rating data. And because there's a difference between the rating from one agency to another agency. So what we do is also to have to create a correspondence between all of the three credit agencies, so that we can have we can sum up when we have the free data available. And the last step on the credit rating, we just interpolated that to have the monthly data set. So this is the way we create the credit ratings. And the data, it's very rich database. And on the bond spread, that is already known, is we source them from the JP Morgan Chase like an EMBI database. That's where we collected the bond spread. So those are the two main indicators. Very quickly on the global factors, global and domestic factors. As I said, the pull factors, so the country interesting part factors, we use, the quality of the macroeconomic, macroeconomic management in the country, and we use the real GDP growth rate, inflation, the fiscal deficit. We also use unemployment rate. So we use many indicators. What I'm going to present here today are the main of those we found interesting to present, but we tested many indicators, many pull factors in our regression. We also use the level of economic development, which is materialized by the GDP per capita, for each country. We use country external debt structure, which is the debt level, the debt service, and also we also use the total reserve of the country to see the quality of the macroeconomic situation. And then we also consider the FDI in the country. FDI also sometimes provide a signal, for investors, and we found that it would be a very good indicator to see if that's impact the credit rating and the bond spread in the market. And then we consider some of the governance indicators. The one that forms significant is the rule of law that we are going to show. But we tested many governance indicators. We use the World Bank database, consider all of them, and we also include the spread between the US 10 years T-bill rates and the 3 month, which we use as an external factor. And globally, the sample or the data that we have, it is I'm just describing developing and emerging countries, but that include even advanced countries that we have. But here, in terms of a developing and emerging market, we have 71 countries in 5 regions. So 19 countries in the sub-Saharan Africa region, 15 in Latin America and Caribbean, 17 in Europe and Central Asia. But all those countries are developing and emerging markets. And we also, have 6 countries in, Middle East and North Africa, and 9 in East Asia and Pacific. So that is the full data set that we have in terms of developing an emerging market. And just to give you a very quick overview of the post estimation, a descriptive statistic, and very simply. So, as I said, we have the spread, the rating, GDP growth, inflation, debt service, total reserve, credit to private sector. That is an important indicator because that also provides the soundness of the credit sector of the country, which is an indicator also that might impact the credit rating and the bond spread. We consider that. We rule of law, external debt, and the US term premium. We also consider openness and the fiscal balance. Fiscal balance here is not the fiscal deficit, per se. It's a fiscal balance. So it is so when it's positive, seeing that there's a surplus, and that's negative, that is a deficit. So here is just the balance that we use. And you can see here, the maximum of the rating and the outlook, which is a 19, because it's very wide. Let's basically that we use just to have a greater variability in the rating data, and to have like a sound, robust econometric parameter estimation. So that is a quick overview of the data set, and then let's move on to some of the preliminary results, and we'll see. So in terms of the result, so what the first, we we estimate the first equation that I show you. So we're trying to see the determinants of the credit rating. So here the dependent variable is the rating plus outlook. And as I said, it is the sum of the rating and outlook that we got from the free agencies when data are available, and not when there's no data. We know there is like only one rating. We consider that. And here, let's just explain the column here. So you can see on the left side, you will see those are the factors that we found, let's say, useful to present here. And the first column, what I call A, is it's in the first column we don't consider credit to private sector, and we remove credit to private sector openness. Then we add them sequentially. And in column B, you will see the same thing, the same equation. Then we add openness. Last column C, the same thing. Then we add rule of law. So we go to the private sector openness, and then to governance indicators. And yeah, you see that there is two blocks of results. So the first block of 3 columns is when we use simple fixed effect. Second block, it's just the same, regressions. And here we just use like the cluster, standard deviation, so that to have like a more robust result estimation. And the interesting part is that we basically we have let's say interesting result with fixed effect. Some of variable are not significant when we use the robust, and this is because of the sample size. Because this is because sample size. But again, we have a very interesting result here for the credit rating using the fixed effect, and we did that. We run the same regression using the probit, and we got the same type of a result, which is and we can see that GDP growth has like the column the C, which is the let's say the most completed equation. You will see that a positive GDP growth in the country, that will increase the rating, and that is what we expected. So when this the economies is doing well, we expect that the credit rating agency, the credit rating will also be good, and we see the GDP per capita, which is the economic development of a country, also has a positive impact of a rating. Fiscal balance, when there is a surplus, the credit agency also consider that, or the investors also look at that when they when coming to to price the ratings. And inflation, which is an important thing, so you can see that higher inflation will impact negatively the rating of a country. Debt service also is well signed. We also see the unemployment rate. All those variables have the good sign, and they are statistically significant, showing that the rating that we observe for the countries globally are very are supported by the economic fundamentals. Yeah, the R square is like 34%. But we look at all the paper that we see, that is very interesting, because there are most of papers, they don't have like a R square that is higher than like 50%. So here it's what we get, and then if another way to interpret those results, we just use we call that the standard deviation. So it's a way to interpret the result. So the way we do that, we use the standard deviation of the dependent variable and the standard deviation of the factors, and then we divide the standard of factors by the standard deviation of the rating. That's provide a kind of to see what would be in terms of a relative contribution, by using the one standard deviation interpretation. And the graph that we are seeing here, those are in the percentage. So you can see that higher external debt. That's what we saw from the table. Here is just to see visually what are the relative contribution, and we can see that external debt, unemployment rate, and debt service, those are the main contributors to credit ratings in terms of how they downgrade the credit rating. And on the positive side, we can see rule of law, which we usually don't think about. People think we just think that that is only depend on economic factors, but we see that rule of law is one of the main contributors to credit rating in the country. We have a credit to private sector, GDP growth, which is the economic development of the country. All those factors impact positively the rating of the country. And another thing that also I just want to emphasize here, we can see the GDP growth, which is here. GDP growth is the impact. Its impact is not very much. It's not like a very sizable like rule of law, but I was expecting that GDP growth will have a higher impact compared to rule of law, but this is not what we see from the empirical results. And then after that, if you we just also want to look at now the determinant of the bond spread, and those are the regression, the model that I showed you when I was talking about the econometric framework, and basically I tried to present the table so that when we see them visually, it is the same way we present them. So here in column A, B, C, it's the same way. We just augment the equation by adding credit to private sector, openness, rule of law, and an interesting result here is what I pointed in blue. We can see that. You can see the connection between the bond spread and the credit rating, which is very significant. It is significant. Also, GDP growth also has an significant impact on the bond spread. So here the dependent variable is the bond spread, and it shows that there is a strong connection between the rating and bond spread, and also a strong connection between the bond spread and the economic factors. Some of them are not significant, like the unemployment rate, which was significant for credit rating, but here is not impacting the bond spread. And those are the things that we probably will look at deeply to see what is going on, why there's no connection between unemployment rate and bond spread, and all those things. But most of the fundamentals here will impact the bond spread in the market. And again, we do the same thing. We try to see the one standard deviation impact, the relative contribution, to see what are the most important factors. And here we clearly see the most important part is the rating, saying that the bond spread that we see in the market is strongly affected by the rating that provided by the credit rating agencies. So if there is any bias for African country or for it developing an emerging market, that will be very critical, on what we see in the bond spread, because of the strong impact that we see here, and relatively, compared to the other component that we use, but we also see fiscal balance, total reserve. All those elements will impact the bond spread in the secondary bond market. And another point that also I would like to probably to stress on here is that higher external debt, which is also very important, debt and debt service. Also, those elements will increase the spread that we see in the market. So those were like to see visually, to see what are the relative importance of the factors that we use consider in the regression here. And then the last thing that we present here, today is we see that there is a strong connection between credit, let's say, credit rating and bond spread and the economic fundamentals. We see that a strong link, and also a strong link between credit rating and bond spread. And then what we want to see here to try to see if that connection depend from one region to another region. So here we consider 6 regions here in the data set, our data set. So the first one is we have the last column is Sub-Saharan Africa. Then we have North Africa. We have the Middle East and North Africa. We also have Latin America and Caribbean, Europe and Central Asia, and the last one is East Asia and Pacific. And what we see here, and I think it's very interesting, is that for some of the regions, let's say here, if you look at the GDP per capita, what is the economic development of a country? That will impact the credit rating in Southern Africa, but that is not the case for North Africa countries. Saying that, for North Africa countries, when it comes for the rating, it's people, credit rating agency don't take into account the the level of economic development. And that's true for some of the components here. I'm not going to go deeply on them, but the key thing that I want to mention here is the result vary considerably from one region to another region. And we can see the same thing when we go through the factors on bond spread. We do the same thing. We can see that the result depends strongly on the region. That's varies. So the bias exists from one region to another region, but we don't know exactly what's the size of the bias. But we know that the results vary considerably from one region to another. Some of the components, found significant are not significant in other regions. And if we do the same thing that we did to see the relative contribution, and then we compare from one region to another region, we get that graph here. That's, I think, very important. And we can see here we just present the relative importance of credit rating on bond spread. So the impact of credit rating on bond spread. We see that from one region to another region, and we use the standard deviation technique. And we can see that for Middle East and North Africa, we see that there is a strong reaction of the credit rating on bond spread, which is fundamental, saying that in the market for North African countries, when people look at the rating, the anticipation on what will be in the bond spread is higher compared to East Asia and Pacific. The same case true for Southern Africa countries. So the two last, let's say, bar here showing that it might be an African bias in terms of the reaction of a credit rating to bond spread. And we're trying to provide more, to go deeply on that. And here is just some of the preliminary results that I would like to show to you and get your feedback so that we can move on paper. And just to summarize very quickly, it is what we already know. Sound domestic macroeconomic indicators, GDP growth, inflation, unemployment rate, all those things impact the credit rating and the bond spread. Good institution quality also contribute to increase credit rating and reduce bond spread. Second group, takeaway is that external debt, so debt service, and also lower reserve also lead to a credit rating deterioration and also an increase in bond spread. And last thing is that, we found a strong and significant relationship, even from one region to another region, between country rating and the bond spread. We're seeing that, all those components are linked to economic factors, to pull and push factors. So we don't worry too much on the credit rating because those are based on the economic fundamentals. But what we worry about is it might be an African bias, and that is the last point in blue. So those are the key points I would like to share with you today. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
So let's give a hand of applause to Alessandra and Issouf for this exciting research. And absolutely interesting. I don't know whether Issouf wants to add before I go.
Yeah, just Tommy, and thank you very much, Alexandre. You did a very good job, actually. I think one of the key things that really our people make really a good case is really the data dimension, right? Because basically, we are focusing on emerging and developing economies, and big part of those economies, we for really a very important issues with them are African countries. But if you look at the data, you see that most African countries start having rating starting with 2000. You see, then in the 2000, most of them start having, the rating when they start really issuing euro bonds and so on. Then the previous study, usually even people discuss about, basically biases and so on. But in terms of data, it was very difficult to prove it actually. And then I think, with the data set we have, some of those issues, basically we can really address them. And this bias issue, there are some kind of, factual, evidence of it. Basically, whether, research support it or not, that's another issue. For example, if you look at Namibia, for example, and Greece has gone through default, actually. Greece at default through, when we had all this financial crisis. But, and also Greece and Namibia have the same rating. But if you look at the spread, basically, Namibia pays much more for its debt compared to Greece. Although Namibia never default, actually. The same thing also, if you take, for example, Mauritius and Italy, actually. Mauritius actually is one of the two investment grade countries in Africa, Mauritius and Botswana. And then compared to Italy, Mauritius has a better rating than Italy. But when it comes to real debt pricing on the market, Mauritius pay much more for its debt compared to Italy. Then, the question comes to basically, are those actually ratings or spread actually very, reflective of economy, or there are some kind of biases and so on? This, I think this really with those are factual, element and so on. I think this also justify really what we are trying to do. But as Alexandre said, this is really work in progress, right? It's the first version. You have a primer, right, to get the first result actually. And then we really want as much as really comments, suggestions, and so on to improve the paper for the next stage actually. And thank you very much.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Issouf, for adding those very important observations. This paper is very, very impressive, and I think also timely in view of the prevailing difficulties, especially of raising a new funds, and go back to a recently, I think that was about March, April last year when the IMF produced its quarter regional report, and the heading was the liquidity squeeze. Liquidity squeeze and inability of countries to be able to access funds, and I think it's not only the debt dimension but also that ability to raise new money becomes a problem. So it is very, very, very timely. The paper is very well motivated. I very much enjoyed the looking into the existing literature and then basing on that the important empirical specification, accessing very high quality data, especially using monthly data on a huge sample of 71 emerging and developing countries. That's very, very phenomenal. And then, of course, you added the regional dimension of being able to compare the progress around the regions. So, and then, of course, the very interesting findings you gave, especially the emphasis on the African, bias and of course, questions on how that could be resolved. Now, maybe some observations, and then I can get back to the questions from the floor. A number of issues maybe here. I know that some of this work tends to arise from the literature and go straight into the empirics. But what about the theoretical underpinnings, the possible theoretical underpinning that would motivate the need to look at credit ratings and the bond yields, and maybe drawing from such a theories as arbitrage, why funds tend to fly from one country, or investors move their funds from one country to another. Do they follow the ratings, or do they follow profitability? So maybe there could be a little bit about the theoretical underpinnings. I was actually also curious when you mentioned about the linkage between ratings and spreads. And I think actually that's very, very well done, especially in the later regressions. The one question I had in mind, observation, is it possible to determine what leads what? Which is it credit rating that lead the bond yields, or is it the other way around? That the waterfalls flow downwards as in Zambezi, or it could also be the reverse, where bond yields may fall, or it may be directional. Something that maybe kind of be important. Now, I've been interested in this work for especially solvent credit ratings for many years, and one of the issues I always faced, and I don't know how you overcome this, one of the issues I always faced is to translate the ratings into quantitative numbers that you can then use in the empirical work. For example, if you take the current ratings on Kenya, the Standard & Poor is B minus. Moody's is B3 minus. Fitch is B minus. Now, how do you then translate this into numbers and able to so I think that's where the kind of methodologies and maybe something, an appendix in your paper, but it would be good to share your insight and help us see how we can address some of these the kind of tangible discrepancies in the three main ratings that look at these economies. Now, I very much admire the way you pulled out the fundamentals, and also you looked at some other additional factors. I wonder, though, where, in view of my recent work with the Olive Volz and other colleagues, whether there is a missing elephant in the room. You see, that this work, we argue that climate risk is fundamental to understanding the bond yields. We develop a model in which when there is climate at time t, okay, and at time t plus one, let's take it even in terms of months, the macroeconomic fundamentals go berserk, and then the risk ratings go low, and then there's high premiums, and borrowing becomes impossible. And we compute actually for a number of 20 vulnerable countries how much they paid more in the access to bonds or yields, simply because of climate risk. So on that basis, and they're gonna send you the paper published about 2 years ago, and that you argue that climate risk is a big issue in explaining some of these rating spreads. And also some of the factors, maybe prices. Maybe prices are implicit because You could explain market clearing in terms of prices or volumes. Interest rates, exchange rates maybe appear somewhere, or maybe they're implied in the volumes given. And finally, this is one observation I want to make. This paper is timely, okay? And there is a recent paper by Marco Pagano in the Journal of Financial Economics, very recent, in which they are looking at, another question. This is a asset pricing, and they argue that COVID-19 has changed the asset pricing, and asset markets have been able to price COVID-19 in terms of the valuation they use here is social distancing. And this will be very important, and it's timely because your work is timely, and are there avenues of incorporating the COVID-19 impact on the ratings? I think given the measures that are flagged up, used creatively in Pagano's work, I think it might be possible to have in a variable that captures the way the different countries were able to cope. That is the resilience and vulnerability or exposure to COVID-19 as an explanation of some of the ratings. Maybe that is possible. But I would like to open the discussion to the floor. I pause here. I can see a number of hands up already. Let me try to, I think I can take them in the order they are. Is that possible? Let me say, see number 1, number 2, number 3. Oh, yes. Okay, excellent. So, number 1, I have Vaibhav Mishra, 2nd, Oladapo, and 3, Abikazim. So, Vaibhav Mishra, please go ahead.
Hello. Thank you so much for a very timely presentation and a paper which is absolutely timely. My question is actually because I have also worked in the same field and I measured the rating action pre and post pandemic and its impact on developing countries. So what I've observed is that, and I've interacted with a lot of rating agencies as a primary research. So they said that our major goal is to protect the private capital. And the flow of private capital in Africa is almost 60% of the total flow of capital. So that is why they say that one of the reasons where African sovereigns are seen as major risk bearing countries rather than others. When actually I gave the same opinion about the sovereign comparison of Greece, and I gave Morocco at that time because they were in the same grade. But they said that Greece is or Italy belong to higher economic bloc, and that shields them and gives them an access to better rating and as compared to any sub-Saharan Africa or even North African country. So in my view, I think when I worked with the UN, we were of the opinion that a separate rating agency, an organization run by public, which is like an IMF governed, should be able to be established, and basis of that, a sovereign shall be rated in the developing countries. What is your view on that? Because for me, it is, these 3 private rating agencies, they will play to the game of the global north. And they will never be pro global south. It's political and it's very well established. So I don't think that these rating agencies will do any justice to global south.
Thank you very much, Vaibhav. And indeed, I suppose there should be an African Development Bank rating agency for African country. But I leave up to Alexandre whether you can pronounce yourself on that. Yeah, maybe I could call upon Alexandre and Issouf to respond before I ask Oladapo to come in.
Okay, so Prof, yeah, I may start, and then you could come back to to polish the the response that I'm going to give. Yeah, Vito, I think you made very good observations, and I may not have like the answer of all, but I will try. So on the first point, so on the theoretical part, yeah, it seemed that you already read the paper before we circulated that. So if you go to the paper, we have a section, a theoretical part. So the equation that I show you here is not we don't go directly to the equation. We derive those equations actually. So we're starting for arbitrage a theory model, and we do that, and we come up with the equation that you see. But I just remove that to make the discussion interesting. But it's it is a very good point, and it's something that also we are going to strengthen and put in the paper. And yeah, on the link between the rating and the spread, that is it is a very perfect question, and it is for sure I will look at that also. But as I suspect that might be a bidirectional effect. But going back to the literature, the one that people they consider is the one that I presented. So but to strengthen the paper, I think we need to test that, and that is a very good point. I take note of that. We do that, and for the rating, for the qualitative, how we move from qualitative. Let me show you very quickly a table here, and you will see something very quickly. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, yes, I can see. Yeah.
I
Okay.
can see, yeah.
Yeah, that is the the scale that we use very simply.
Okay.
So as we can see, you see that the notation of the S&P here on the first column, you have a Moody's and Fitch, and here is the way we do that. So we try to have a correspondence between the three, saying that the highest rating for S&P is Troop A here, and for Moody's also is AA, and we have the same thing for Fitch. So we give the highest score, which is 22. So we start from 1. Let me show that to you very quickly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, from 1 to 72. And between the two, between the number that we see here, we add the outlook. So we codify also the outlook. So that we don't have just number like 21, 22, but we have decimal also. We add the decimal, taking on the outlook. So this is the correspondence grade that we use, and that will be added to the paper as in annex, and we also add some explanation so that people can use that or can test the result that we have. On the climate risk, that's fundamental. Yeah, I don't have it is you touch a very interesting point. And what we do, we're trying to find some climate indicators or climate vulnerability indicators, and we'll see how that impact the rating and the bond spread. And yeah, and on the paper that you mentioned, I think the COVID impact, that also it's fundamental, because we know that COVID has changed the structure. Even as we mentioned, there's a pricing. COVID changed that, and most of the paper that we saw empirical results that we know, then when we look at them on the post-COVID environment, they completely change. So for sure, we need to try to add, to see what will be the impact of COVID. And Vibef asked, a good question, and it is a bit political, I would say. So I will not go deeply on that. Yeah, for sure. A domestic rating agency will be good. Yeah, we all know that. Because why? Because they know the economic environment, and even myself, I'm looking at the rating, but I'm not sure that I master 100% the background framework of Moody's or Fitch. I don't know exactly what is the black boxes. We don't know, and probably because they are not on the ground here, like in Abidjan. Abidjan, I can see what are the fundamental elements that will impact the credit rating of Côte d'Ivoire. But because they are in DC, in other big cities, They don't know exactly, so they apply probably the same structure from one country to another country, and that may create a bias. And that's what we saw from the result. And I 100% agree with you. That need to be done. And the thing that you mentioned, one thing that I think we can also explore is because Italy belong to let's say higher economy bloc. It may explain why why the rating is higher than other countries, as the Professor Issouf mentioned, compared to Mauritius. Yeah, and that's like provide like a way we can try to see what would be the impact of if we block them with the, we try to see the economic zone, and probably that will also help to refine the result, and I will look at that also. So those are the the quick point that I want to provide on the question. I may forget some of them. I will let Professor Issouf to go and polish the response that I provided. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Alexandre, I think you respond to all of them. But just to come back to few things. Basically, I take this one for my suggestions and so on. They are not really questions. Basically, but on the way forward, we'll take them on board. But just to come on something, Victor, you mentioned. In terms of climate, right? Climate risk, taking into account of climate and so on. I might say, even the rating agency, in last November, I kind of provide a training, for the UNECA, it was for all African countries, and we did it online and so on. And then one of those issues was basically the way, those rating agency take into account the ESG, criteria, actually. And then if you look at the methodologies, actually, they are starting now to take into account the ESG criteria. But it's not even clear that if they are encompassing all of them, really completely, because most of the methodology to incorporate this one are very qualitative, actually. But they are starting to incorporate that into the ratings, actually. Of course, we have the rating before the ESG, even the ESG, the whole discussion about the ESG started, then that will be interesting. But my point will be basically, if really the climate change actually impact on the credit risk, right, of the countries, normally if the rating is done, properly, it should incorporate that, actually. Because if the rating, doesn't incorporate that, it means that the ratings are not really a good indicator of the credit risk per se, actually, some point in time. That will be the answer I will provide to that. And then that comes also to one of the points, actually, I think Viadaco, right? Viadaco made about, Greece and Italy. If basically the rating is a reflection of the credit risk, then basically, if Italy, because they are in the bloc of the European Union, has a better credit risk, it has less credit risk, than another country, then that should be reflected on the rating. Then they should not really say that, okay, Italy will get, basically not a good rating, but at the same time, vessel will reflect on the spread, because basically rating is the reflect of really the credit risk of a country. Then even if you're on the block, then you should take all that into account and say that, okay, because you're on the block, your environment and everything, putting together, this is basically the rating. And of course, the global stuff, this is the whole discussion about basically, are we better served but the institutions which have been put in place in the global north, actually, right now? That's the whole debate. And I know there are a lot of debate in Africa whereby people are saying that we should get, the Africa rating agency and so on. But as Alexandre said, this is much more a political issue and so on. But at the same time, if we do that, basically, will investors try and, trust, those rating agencies? That's another question, actually. But see, of course, this is a debate, and this is debatable, right? Okay, Victor, I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and also Issouf, for the responses. Vaibhav, I'll bring you in a little bit later. Oh, you've gone. Okay. So let me bring in now Oladapo, and after that, Abi, and then Vaibhav will bring you in again after that. Oladapo. Oladapo is our very own PhD student, and is interested in all these issues, including regulation. So Oladapo, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, thank you very much for the paper. It's indeed very timely when we consider what most countries are going through in developing economies. So I think the first question, the person that asked the first question took the questions out, that comment, not the question, the comment, out of my lips, because, the bias, the way you interpreted the bias between developed and developing economy, I think a way to go about that is to consider, the global financial safety net, the tools available, under a global financial safety net, and which of those tools are made available to developing countries. For example, during currency shocks, we have the swap lines, currency swaps with the US Fed. And I think the US Fed has currency swap with just 8 countries in the world. I can't remember the figure, such that when the currency shocks, they made, you can swap your currency, make dollar available, and all of this will definitely play into the spread that we see in credit yield. So we can go about, putting global financial safety network tools into our models to see what the results will look like. That's a comment. The question that I have is, all of this, how do you interpret endogeneity? Because really, if we think about it carefully, we'll see that, ratings usually change, when the spreads will usually change when the credit rating changes, right? So I see some form of endogeneity there. So did you put that into consideration, in all of your models? All right, I think that's just a comment.
Thank you, Oladapo. Should I take maybe another question and then come back to you, Alexandra? Let me take the intervention by Abby. Please, Abby, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay, very good. This is a very, very good paper. I should really congratulate the authors. Very well crafted and well executed. Very interesting. I have maybe, let me say, 3 observations. The first one is in relation to, I think, the point made about our own rating and also the bias that is happening from advanced countries. I don't like to use the word global north and south, but advanced countries. I think, yeah, these ratings are always dependent on pre-post shocks. This shock can be COVID. This shock can be the one that Victor was mentioning in terms of climate risk from his World Development paper in 2021. And it can also be conflict. For instance, if you see my country, the rating has cascaded very badly downwards after conflict has been the case. Why? Because capital flight is increasing, or even private investors don't come. So that really signals that something is going badly wrong, and also the risk to capital investment is very high. That is one observation. And I know people like Songwe, the executive secretary of UNECA, the former one, was pushing for our own continental-wide credit scoring agency. I don't think we can really dismiss it as political. Maybe I'm political now, but political with development, with development consequences, actually. Political with development consequences. That is just an observation. The second one is in relation to your estimation. Just for robustness, you have done a lot of good work. Did you estimate the pooled ordered profit or the random effects ordered profit? I was not clear whether you have done the ordered profit pooled one or the other one. I think in terms of the theoretical underpinnings of the pooled one, I think existing simulation exercises shows that it is more robust and it is even easier for you. I think you can defend it that way. So just to clarify whether you have done random effects ordered profit in the panel context or just a pooled one. Just a simple question. And finally, I think I'm very happy that Victor is here, because last week I was at IMF and we had a paper which is linking any climate risk related investment with the debt.
We lost
Okay,
you. Sorry.
I know your paper was showing how the cost of capital rises for firms in relation to climate risk. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you very well, Abi.
Yeah. I think that paper really gives us an insight how maybe at a sovereign level, climate risk investments or investment related with environment can be leading to more debt. A phenomenon of debt on debt, because we know already countries are in debt. Now, if you get climate finance to mitigate climate risk, you will be in more debt. I think I will send this draft paper to you as well, but it really gave me an insight to look into the transmission mechanism of that paper too. So very timely paper and a very nice one.
Okay.
Thank you, Abi. Sorry, I didn't introduce Abi. Abi is our very own Director of Research at the African Economic Research Consortium, a Pan-African headed in Nairobi, and also affiliated with the University of Sheffield. Yeah, thanks indeed. So Alexandra and Issouf, I can see you are taking notes of those points. So I'm going to get the liberty of continuing, if you don't mind, to go back to Vaibhav, and then I can see Rugare. Yes, so I'll go to Vaibhav first.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Victor. So I had my observation from the Financial Times article of Moritz Kremer, where he talked about African countries, credit rating cry is more like a red herring. And his argument was that out of the B-rated, globally rated sovereigns, the average rate of default is 16%. But if you just factor African countries, the same default is at 22%. So there is a correlation why the risk perceptions are high. That's the argument given by Moritz Kremer in that aspect. Number 2 point, in multilateralism, if the sovereigns go through a multilateral route, say for instance an economic shock like COVID, and then there is a DSSI framework. So all the DSSI compliant countries, say for example Ethiopia, the moment they open up for DSSI to apply for DSSI for suspending that service, the sovereigns go after them. The credit rating agencies go after them. Like Ethiopia was downgraded immediately. So there is a complete correlation between like a sovereign, ready to work with multilateralism, and it become a victim of it in the credit market, global credit market. So,
yeah.
Yes. Excellent. Thanks for adding those a very important observation. As you can see, I did post in the chat mentioning to our very own institution, Hughes Cordio, that NSEA could be the starting point of compiling the rating. Of course, they have the technical capability, and AfDB has the funding. So I think somehow, I think there can be ratings available serially almost every month on each of the African countries, and I think that could very well happen. Oh yeah, let me take also further comments from Rugare, and now at this point, after that, I will give you a chance to respond to those comments. Rugare Mukanganga, please come aboard. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. My question is somewhat hypothetical, and also has Africa specifically in mind. There is talk of the African peer review mechanism setting up an independent credit rating agency, maybe as soon as the end of this year. It's still at a formative stage, but it's ongoing developments. So my question is, what the researchers think the impact would have of this new agency would have on just having that additional voice outside of the standard 3 in the credit rating space, and what may be approach they can take differently besides, let's say, having people on the ground on the continent. What are the approaches they can take to reduce the issues of bias and all these other things that we've been discussing today?
Wonderful. That's a very good contribution, Rugari. We very much appreciate it, because we are talking about, how this could happen, but you do have the information that, still I think there is the organization like NSEA, which have got high statistical competence and capabilities, can do the technical work. Together with another institution like, African Union. And I suppose, it's an work that would involve some degree of equitable partnerships across a number of organizations, and still it would feel a very important role. Because I still actually, yes, thanks, because you still have the ratings here. You see my complexity when I work with this data, right? I actually transform each one of the ratings into numbers. So I start with, for example, S&P and AA, I give them a rating and then I have a value. I then go with Moody's and then I have a value. And again, which I have a value. Now then it becomes, can you actually combine them and have an index, or do you need to wait to do some weighting? Now, another interesting aspect actually, which has been puzzling me, is why there should be differences. Why is it the case that when you quantify, for example, say Kenya has got AAA and you give a value, and Moody's has got has got a value? Why is it that they can never be the same? What explains, the unknown? Why explain the deviations? And that's kind of very very interesting. So, but very good, Gary, very good that you gave us that information, African Union. Okay, now I go back to Issouf and Alexandre to respond to continue the discussion. I come back to you, Abi. I can see your hand is still up. Yeah.
Alexandre, do you want to go?
Yeah. I can go first. Yeah. So yeah, let me start with a question from Victoria. I think from your comments. So on the weighting, I think that is a great point, and yeah, because we have three major institutions, and it's here what we did to apply the same weight, basically, which is might be debatable, and I agree. And on that point, probably we don't know which one is the most reliable indicator, rating. It's a difficult question, but one important point that you mentioned, why they don't have the same, the same rating, and that's why it's very important to consider the outlook, because when you consider the outlook, that will reduce a bit the discrepancy between that, because even if they don't have the same rating, if you go through the outlook, you will see that let's say one agency can provide A, but Moody's, instead of providing A, will provide A3 here. But if you look at the outlook, for Moody's, it will tend a bit to A2 here. So that's why when you consider the outlook at some point, it's not solving the problem that you raise. I agree, but that may help also to reduce the discrepancy. But I agree, those are a very interesting comment. And from Rugare, what he mentioned, so what will be the impact of the new credit agency? And definitely that is the issue on the credit agencies. If you want to look at that, you need to think about what do we do with the rating? Usually, country use the rating. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, very well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Usually, the rating is used, to go to the international market to get credit. That is to borrow money. That's what we use. That's what the purpose of the rating. So the lenders will look at your rating so that you can discuss, you can agree about the terms of the debt. And depend, because usually African countries or developing economies, they go to the international market, they go to the advanced countries to get funding. And for for those lenders, there is an issue of trust, because for them, the major rating agencies, which are S&P, Moody's, and Fitch, they trust them. And the issue now will come how we are going to do so that they can trust our own agency. Because if they don't trust that our own agency, that means if we want to to get funding with a lower cost, we need to go to domestic market or to get funding from the continent, which might not be sufficient. So at some point there will be let's say I will say our policymakers, they need also trying to trying to defend the way we pricing, we do the rating on the continent, and that's doable. I think that is doable, but that will be a learning stage, and also people also want to see based, if the rating that we are providing, from the own domestic credit agencies, we want to see if that is really supported by the economic fundamentals. So there is a work that needs to be done domestically if you want to get the trust from investors. And on Vibef, question on the average default numbers, and I think that is true. Yeah, I need to look at that also. The difference in default numbers here from the advanced and the emerging development countries, to see how that is is playing. And the last point from Vibef, which is on DSA, I agree that because usually when a country go to to DSA, usually it's like a signal that the country want to go to their market to get funding. And if you want to go to their market, it means that you are you need money, so you need funding, so your economy is not doing well. That is the sign, that is the underlying signal. That's why when you go to a market, there is a direct impact. You will get like probably a downgrade on the credit rating. But if you continue to do well, if the money that you take, is investing in grow enhancing projects, at some point you should you should get upgrade in your credit rating. But I think I agree that it is an issue here. On the point raised by Abby on the rating, the shocks, for sure there's a memory, and I remember that if you were, let's say, country was like bankrupt, let's say, default in the past, that will also impact for a long time, impact the credit rating. So probably what we can do also in our work here, we can try to to create like a variable that summarizing the default history from continent or from the countries, and we can see how the memory impact the credit rating and also the bond spread. That is doable, and I think we can do that. Domestic rating, as I said, it's very important, but there is a communication work that need to be done so that an investor can trust what we provided. And on the econometric framework, order probit, we did both. The pool and random, we did both. And the result that we got, like they are very similar. That's why we have many tables in the paper, more than like 15 papers, the tables. And here we try to present some of them that we think that might be useful for the comprehension of the paper. But we did both. Climate risk, again, I look forward the paper so that we can see how to include that. But I think for sure that is it's something that we cannot ignore. It is very important. And probably there is a question also from Oladapo. The first one was a comment. Second one is endogeneity, and that's related to question asked by Victor. Victor question. And there is a bit of work that also we need to do on that, and to see the direction, the causality of these two components. As I said, we base our analysis on the literature that we survey. So here there is a bit work here, and I agree. We do that. Thank you so much. I will let Professor Issouf to see if there is anything I forget to add. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexandre. Actually, basically, I mean, few things. I mean, I know Oladapo, I mean, talk about basically because investors are kind of taking into account the aging, because of aging of the currency, I mean, instability, then that may explain somehow actually the spread. But basically, let me just come back again, because basically, if you look at the rating, the rating, in the methodology of the rating, it does actually incorporate that dimension of instability, basically. Then if there is a perception that there is more uncertainty on basically on the exchange rate, then the rating actually should also reflect that already, basically. Then if you take two countries, if one for the same basis, actually, if one has more uncertainty in terms of exchange rate and another one has less uncertainty, basically you receive a rating of the one which with more uncertainty will be worse, actually. Basically, this is already incorporated. Then basically, in terms of the spread should reflect actually the rating we see actually. And the same thing actually as what Abi said. Basically, if you look at the rating, they actually incorporate much more of the post, I mean the shocks after the shock happened. But this should not be the case exactly, because the rating, if you read everywhere on the website, they say that this is basically the futures, actually. They look at the future opinion and not the past opinion, actually. But if you look at most of the time, these are much more based on the past opinion than the future. Even there is a study by some of those rating agencies. I think it's Standard & Poor's, if I remember correctly, when I was doing those training for the UNECA, they actually have a study. They are showing that there is a strong correlation between default and rating, actually. Their own study is showing that. Then if the country default by the past, there is a more likely that it will get a bad rating, actually. And then we thought to conclude basically on NCR and the African Development Bank. This has already taken place. You know, when I was at the African Development Bank, I was coming from NCR. Basically, the African Development Bank, my work was basically, I was working on the sovereign rating, and we actually developed internal model for the ADB. Because at that point of time, why we did that actually, it was for the internal pricing. Because we could not rely on the economic intelligence unit rating, because that economic intelligence unit, if you look at the rating of the African country, they will put all the African country in one rating actually. But that wasn't helpful for us, because for us, we needed to know the differences among the African countries actually. And that's why when I was there, the unit actually, we developed our own internal rating actually. And then we had that rating. That means the methodology is already there. We can upgrade it actually. Anyway, that's but we did it. That was a long time ago when I was working, and that was my job basically. I was there. But that's a long time ago. We need to update the methodology actually.
Thanks so much, Issouf. We need to ask the African Development Bank to take you back to redesign the rating.
Yeah, welcome back, Professor. Welcome back.
No, thank you indeed. Very good discussion going on a rating, because I had posed the question in the chat saying are the rating agencies backward looking? But this discussion has, in a way, shed some light here, because they include some maybe expectations when they are doing the surveys. It may well be the case that expected values, since Alexandre is doing a lot of forecasting, we can have expected values included as one of the key kind of determinants or forecast values of some of those variables which might be there. Yeah. Oladapo, you still have your hand up. Maybe you want to come back.
Yes, I just want to come back. I have an additional.
Go ahead.
Thanks for making that clarification, and I think it makes a whole lot of sense, right? That really, indeed, there shouldn't be this bias, because the rating would have taken into consideration those the factor that I talked about. But again, I also want us to think about the market preference for the sovereign bonds. For example, in Nigeria now, if you go to Nigeria, if you look at I wouldn't say crisis, but how bad our macroeconomic variables are. you know, you have high inflation, you have currency, you know, devaluation, high currency devaluation, similar to what Ghana went through, you know, before, you know, they went to IMF and all of that. But if you look at the yield, the sovereign yield, Nigerian sovereign yield, is still very stable. And I keep asking myself, you know, when I look at it, I keep asking myself, how come, you know, the shock that we are seeing in Nigeria is not transmitting to the bond pricing, you know? So for me, what I sense is that in a way, Africa, you know, portfolio managers, you know, asset management companies in Africa, you know, if you want to buy bonds, which other countries do you buy African bonds? Is Nigeria, you know, Ghana, you know, it used to be Ghana, but Ghana defaulted and everybody will have to move to Nigeria. You see, so there's a way, you know, the market would prefer some, you know, some particular bonds over others, you know, aside the fact that, okay, the rating on the bond is same with another country, but for the fact that, you know, it's this country, I just have that preference. And again, if you speak to most, you know, asset management companies in Nigeria today as we speak, they will tell you, oh, they are looking at buying UK. But I still spoke with someone today, he was telling me he wants to buy UK bonds, you know, and all of that. They are beginning to look at bonds in developed markets, you know. And again, if you think about it, when these funds flow to those bonds, it will compress the yields and make it look like, oh, you know, then link it to, oh, it's because of the credit rating. It might not be because of the credit rating. So again, we can just look at, you know, how these preferences, you know, for these bonds work, you know, and how the impact it has on yields. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aladapo, for coming back into the discussion. I think you are making very, very, very valid and useful points in terms of, I think, producing the ratings is one thing, but whether the investors and the markets are able to take up that rating is absolutely important. So we bear that in mind. I think in terms of the nature of the investment market in Africa and the other emerging and developing economies. Good, good. Okay. I think so far when I look around, there are no hands going up, but we are coming to the end of the session. We have only a couple of minutes remaining. Before I pass on my thanks to Andre and Issouf, maybe I should give them a chance to say the final word, which could be a final sentence or whatever I want to say, the final word. So I call upon Andre and then Issouf for the final word, and then we can wrap it up. Please go ahead. Alexandra.
Yes, as final word, I just want to thank you very much for hosting us today. It is a really pleasure to share the preliminary result of the paper for you and to get the comment. And really we got a very interesting comment, engaging discussion. And just want to thank very much all the participants here. It was like a very real pleasure. And be reassured that we are going to work on the paper, take into account all your comment that you provided, and we will circulate it a more complete version of the paper. Just also want to thank you, thank Meng for the coordination. She's behind the scene, and we don't see what she did, but she did a lot, and I just want to thank her, for everything that she did to make this, discussion happen. And Victor, it's a big thanks to you, to make it happen. Thank you so much, and I hope to come back again with another paper or with Professor Issouf also. And thank you, Professor Issouf, for always supporting, young researchers like me. And it's a real pleasure to work with him. Even as his level, he put his hand in collecting database, in doing all the stuff that I need to do and to do. Thank you so much, Professor Issouf. And it is a big pleasure to work, together. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you indeed. Thank you, Sandra Cassandra. Issouf, do you want to have a final word before we close?
I second everything Alexandre said. Thank you very much. And Victor, on the chat, basically the comments on the chat, if you can, if Ben can forward it to us, because we don't see it, then if we can forward to us, that will be really helpful. And thank you very much to everyone for the comments and the suggestion and so on. And hopefully, this paper will go to, who knows, right? Political economy or something like that, right? Thank you very much. And Victor, thank you very much for giving us the chance actually to present and to those who made the comments and suggestions actually. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, so once again, I just want to thank very fundamentally Alexandre and Issouf for this very interesting paper. It's a great paper, the work in progress, and I hope that the comments and discussions that have ensued will help to consolidate this paper. And there is no doubt in my own mind that it will end up in a 4-star or 3-star minimum, journal, because it's already is solid. It will come up with a high exit velocity. So well done, and for sharing this work with us. Let me also take this opportunity to thank all the participants for being able to make it, to be generous with their comments. There also, this is not the end of the discussion. This is just whet your appetite in the paper. If you think about any additional point, however small you may think it is, please post it to us or direct it to Andre and Issouf or to Meng, who can pass it on. As usual, we do record this and we shall pass on all the points to you, Andre, and Issouf. And again, yes, comments are still going on the chats. Thanks very much, Director Hughes Hoidio, for the comments that you are also sharing with us here. So I thank you so much. Let's put our hands together and thank the participants and all the audience for this.